Okay, it's 6 o'clock. Let's call this meeting to order. And then, Lauren, would you mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. Thank you, Lauren. Roll call.
President Griffin,
Here.
Director Boyd,
Here.
Director Cordell, Director Ritora,
Here.
and Vice President Santamana is absent.
Okay, thank you. Item 4, posting of the agenda declaration.
The agenda for tonight's regular board meeting was posted on Thursday, July 8th, 2021.
Okay, thank you. Okay, item 5, conflict of interest declaration. Is there any conflicts to declare?
None here.
None.
And none for me also. Okay, item 6, public questions and comments. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons desiring to address the board on any matter not on the agenda and which over the board has jurisdiction. However, no action may be taken by the board of directors on any item not appearing on the agenda. Non-agenda speakers are asked to limit their presentation to 5 minutes. Questions and comments on items listed on the agenda will be accepted at any time the item is brought forth for consideration by the board. When you are recognized by the chairperson, please state your name and address for the record. Do we have any public comment?
Many times over the last number of years, we've had the watering restrictions and stuff. I normally go out for walks in the morning. Some of those push around to a little after 8 o'clock in the morning. Two times in 1 week, I went past Pearson Park, and the city was happily watering their grass. You know, everybody else can't water after that time, but the city does, and I know that it's been, I've observed, and numerous other people observed, very significant, actually, water runoff coming off of Freedom Park, and that, you know, probably is a little difficult to prevent, but I would think that at least, you know, the city should be asked to address that. I don't know if the water district has had conversations with the city about this or not. You know, I know they say they can't, you know, they can't govern the city in those aspects. They're pumping their own water, but you know, just with all this going on with the water, and people tend to get upset. I mean, I've seen people, stuff on Facebook, people complain because they seen a contractor watering dirt and he's letting water run for several hours and complain, you know. I mean, they're feeling the pinch on this. And so when they see the city just flaunting, you know, the rules everybody else is held to, they don't like it. It seems like they act like they basically don't care. You know, they're exempt from the rules the rest of us live under, so maybe a letter from the water district to the city saying, you know, would you guys please, you know, try to hold to the same rules that you're expecting your citizens to hold up to as far as water use. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Neal. Okay, we have another public comment on the phone. Speaker, go ahead, please state your name and address.
Yes, this is Renee West-Lusk. I live within Ridgecross city limits. I have 2 comments, or questions actually. One, is the status of the adjudication going to be discussed? And the second question has to do with the timeline of the state mandate of going to 55 gallons per person. Is that going to be discussed at any point in tonight's meeting? Because I can't tell from the agendas if these 2 items. I also want to know, with that timeline, it doesn't go into effect, I guess, until January 2022, but there's another component to it. It's the outdoor water use, and I'd appreciate if somebody could shed some light on if this 55 gallon per person of indoor use, do we know at all how it's going to affect outdoor use? Will outdoor use be exempt, possibly, and it'll just be limited to indoor use, the 55 gallons per person? I'd appreciate any feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. As far as the 55 gallons per day, Don, when he gives his report, will probably give an update on that.
Okay.
And then the adjudication would be completely up to legal if it was discussed. And I do not see that it's on the agenda for tonight to discuss.
There's nothing on the agenda other than closed session. However, I could provide a 2-minute synopsis on the status without going into motivations if that's
would
what
be
the board would
wonderful.
like to hear real quick.
That would be great.
Okay, the cross complaint, which initiated the comprehensive adjudication, was filed on June 16th. Everything that we're doing right now is statutory in nature. This is very standard what we're doing. Once you file the cross complaint, within 15 days, you're required to notify certain public agencies, as well as, quote, operators of a public or state small water system that pumps groundwater. Those notices went to DWR, the county, and just about any agency, public agency that would have jurisdiction over something in the basin would receive that. In addition, we sent out, we estimate around 90 of those notices to local water suppliers. It was done, required by statute, and it contained, in essence, a notice of commencement of groundwater adjudication and a proposed draft answer. The service of that notice on the public agencies as well as the public water suppliers creates no obligation to do anything right now. The district has filed a motion that is set to be heard on August 19th. It's a fairly standard motion, at which time we would ask the court to approve, in essence, the notice of commencement of groundwater adjudication and the draft answer that were included by statute in the notice that just went out. I assume that will be approved by the court on August 19th, and then somewhere around September 1st, give or take, we would start the process of serving all of the overlying parcels within the basin. And so if you're familiar with the GSP, when the engineer's report and the replenishment fee under Prop 218 was sent out, the notices were sent out to every parcel owner, approximately 20,000. We will be doing a similar exercise, which would go out in, like I said, the best estimate right now is around September 1st. And so I would just advise the public that there is, in fact, you can go to the district's website, the web page. There's a button on the right-hand side, basin adjudication. If you punch that on, there's already an FAQ on there, and we will continue to update that page as certain events occur. I would also say that when we do this service on September 1st, that will be quite a big task, important. I would say a couple weeks after the landowners and pumpers that receive that notice, I think that the district, we would start having some public workshops, give a presentation, and then as well as answer the questions of the public. This has just filed a couple of weeks ago. Right now, we're just following the statutory scheme. That's the best that I can provide right now, and so that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Did that answer your questions, Renee? She must be gone. Do we have any other public comment? Is she still on? That's pretty much it, yeah. So, okay, any other public comments?
Yes.
Yes, what? Yes, sounds like her.
And I would remind the board that I gave that statement, but we really can't engage in a dialogue on this with the public since it's not on the agenda.
Absolutely, thank you. Okay, seeing no other public comment, we'll go ahead and close the public comment section. Move on to 7, current business and committee reports. A, the consent calendar, approval of board meeting minutes, and accounts payable disbursements. So I'd be looking for a motion for that.
So move.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a first and second. I would like to open this up for public comment and then close public comment, bring it back to the board for a vote. So if there is any public comment on the consent calendar. Okay, hearing no public comment, we're ready for a vote. Okay, motion carries. Okay, 7B, Finance Committee. Stan, are you going to run that for us, please?
The committee recommends that the board authorize the Water District staff work with Mark Hildebrand, who is our finance consultant, work with Mark Hildebrand regarding increasing Water District costs, the impact of new state laws, and the distribution of Sigma costs to ratepayers to come up with a recommendation to the Finance Committee to schedule a new cost of service study. And that's essentially the same as what's written in the agenda, except that it left out the impact of the new state laws, SB 606 and AB 1668.
Okay.
So anyway, we're looking for that to be authorized.
Okay. Thank you for that report. Anybody, I'll be looking for a motion.
I'll move.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll open it now for public comment. If there's any public comment, please state your name and address, and then we will close public comment and bring it back to the board.
Understanding that the new rate study is potentially going to fold in these two new state laws and the extreme restriction on water use that those mandate, it falls to reason that of course the district is probably going to be held to those personal limits via an overall water pumping amount per year, and then we're going to play this game of, well, you use too much water, we're going to fine you, so forth and so on. As a policing and taxing authority, basically, the water district also has not a requirement there. Yeah, I'll say you are required to protect your ratepayers, and they're going to have to pay up, basically, any kind of fines that the state may want to foist upon us, because it's going to be impossible to meet these regulations. As such, I think that the district should seriously consider taking the stand and standing up to the state and saying, look, these are impossible, and you guys drew up these numbers for no good reason. We don't have surface water. We don't have anywhere near the same situation as anybody else, many other entities in the state. We've got an aquifer. We're dealing with that. We've got enough water here for people to pump reasonable amounts of water, and we're not paying, basically. Now, that's never seemed to be a popular stance when I recommended that in years past on other issues to the city and so forth and so on. But it's your obligation to stand you're elected to stand in our place. And if you think that most of your ratepayers would want to stand up and say, no, forget it, we're not paying, this is unreasonable, then you should do likewise.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Any other public comment?
This is just the beginning of a recommendation to get together and start talking about this. We're not making, this group isn't making any decisions, it's just bringing a recommendation, back to the Finance Committee. So I'm sure, we'll be thinking about a lot of those things as time goes on. Although I don't think anybody knows yet what the state is going to do in terms of fees, especially for a small group like us. So I think it's probably too early to get too concerned until we find out a little bit more about, what the fees are going to be and that kind of thing, or if there are going to be fees. And I think they're being postponed for the first year anyway, if I'm not correct there. It starts in June of '22, but they're not going to impose any real fees till a year later.
Excuse me, the standards are to be in place by June of 2022. And then, if I recall correctly, I believe the enforcement doesn't take effect until 2025. That would be the first time. They're allowing you time to comply, and I believe if you haven't complied by 2025, then the fines potentially would start.
Did we ever get a final answer as far as the swamp cooling goes here, or not?
No, that work group is still working on, I think there are 6 or 7 variances that they're looking at. Coolers are still one of them.
We're starting to get away from the rate study, so.
Okay,
We are.
okay. All right, so any other public comment on this item? Okay, so we have a motion and a second to move forward with a rate study
And to move forward with
with
this,
consulting to
yeah.
get it, to
having
talk about
a
getting a rate study.
recommendation to start a rate study.
Okay.
To be clear, we're not starting a rate study. We're going to look at some of the issues that we're going to address further, the fees that we're paying under Sigma, additional legal fees, and there'll be a process there. And once that process that we're hoping to initiate, we'll bring something back to the board, and then the board will make a decision whether or not they want to initiate another rate study at that time. That's the way I would envision it.
Okay, so
That's all.
So all this is just an authorization for staff then, to work with Mr. Hillebrand?
That is correct.
Okay,
But as it's written, it's for the staff to come back to the finance committee, not to the board. The board, this finance committee will send it back to the board.
That is correct. We will work through the finance committee. Staff will be working through the finance committee. That's correct.
okay. Okay, so we have that, a first, a second, and let's call for the vote. Okay, thank you. Motion carries. Admin Exec Committee. I was not at that meeting, so I was hoping David could give the report on it. Don, would you mind doing that report since you were there?
Certainly. One policy that we've been lacking, staff realized, is a formal visitors policy, how we welcome and handle visitors when they're here. So Lauren did the research, drafted a policy. Staff reviewed it. It was sent to legal for their review as well. And in your packet is the result of the reviews. It's essentially to, again, control access to people so they just don't wander around our facilities for safety reasons, as well as to minimize staff interruptions, just not walking into people's office and taking up their time visiting. So if you read the policy, we do exempt, of course, board of directors and also our primary contractors like Mr. Worth, Mr. Krieger, and Mr. Parker. But other than that, we get former employees that come in periodically, or just visitors, and so we want to make sure that they're greeted by somebody and they're escorted, and again, minimize staff disruption. So that's the intent of the policy.
Okay. Any public comment on this item? Okay, we'll bring it back to the board for discussion.
I sat in for you at the exec committee, and the committee did recommend that we approve it. So I would like to move that we approve it now.
One second.
Okay, we have a first, a second. Let's call for the vote. Okay, that carries. And I just received a text that we cannot be heard and public comment cannot be heard when they're speaking at the mic, so if everybody could please speak into the mics loudly. It just said, can you please make sure everyone uses their mic? Cannot hear Mike. So, okay. All right, item 7D, Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority.
We actually went over the June 9th GA meeting and our last water district meeting on June 14th, so I'm not going to repeat everything I said at the last meeting, but I would like to call out two areas that I'm interested in and concerned about. Those two areas are the finance and public outreach. Now, I sent a copy of the finance report to everybody on the board. If you had time to look at it, you would notice that on the replenishment fee, there are two large expenses that have nothing to do with the,
Director Rator, you should not, this should be brought up with the GA first, I think would be going into the detail that you're going, maybe possibly thinking about going into.
okay. I guess the bottom line is we need to be very careful about what is going into the replenishment fee, and I will bring this up, obviously, Wednesday at the GA meeting. There are two other items, if you listen to the GA meeting coming up. One is a progress report by the Regional Government Services where they talk about the finances and the transition of the finances. And so that's going to be an interesting discussion. And the third thing is the Stetson June invoice for $50,000. That is also going to be on the agenda that I will be addressing at that time. The second item that I would like to address is public outreach. I think all the local agencies have had problems with COVID-19 and outreach to the public, but I think the GA has had perhaps a little bit more difficult time. There are two projects coming up in the near future that have already begun, the Recycled Water Project and the Shallow Well Mitigation Project. And I'm hoping that those two projects will be used to regenerate the public outreach and get the PAC and the TAC included in what we're doing. One of the things the GA needs to do is rebuild public trust, and I think that would be a good way to pull them in. So that concludes my report, and be glad to answer any questions.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Stan, for your report. Okay, what I want to do is open it to public comment, and then we will close public comment and come back to the board. So if anybody has comment on the GA, please come to the podium or call in now.
Good evening, gentlemen. Once again, Mike Neal. Maybe they were talking about me, so I'm leading in here. Okay, segueing off of what Mr. Ratora said, building public trust in the GA. I think most of you know pretty well by now that that has gone way downhill with the Searles Valley Minerals issue. And that's not a small thing. There's hundreds and hundreds of people in this valley who are looking at dire circumstances conceivably from the actions of the GA on their individual lives. One of the things that is going to be really almost probably impossible to overcome, and there's going to be decisions that are reasonable things that are going to need to be done, such as the recycled water from the wastewater treatment plant. That's going to cost $2,000-3,000 an acre feet to produce. There's going to be cost to the other water alternatives that we've got to try to make use of to solve the water supply problem in this valley. And nobody is going to like having their bills increased and having to pay those, but they're going to be necessary But what people don't like, I particularly don't like, and since before the GA even was formed, I was here and I was at the city saying, you can't just sign agreements and make agencies and have unelected people in a board taxing and policing the citizens. Of course, that was ignored. That needs to be corrected, or you're still going to have people they're going to see these costs and they're going to go, why am I paying this? I never voted anybody in to put this cost on my head. Well, I've brought this up and I've, spoken about it and submitted written comment about it to the district, and I'm going to do what I promised. I'm going to repeat myself again, and that is that the district really should withdraw from the GA and initiate action in the proper fashion, which would be by an initiative, which is then petition signed by voters to get rid of this unelected GA and initiate an elected groundwater agency in this valley. Then people can vote for those people that want to represent them on that. And then if they don't like how it goes, then it's like any other, agency, just like you guys. If they don't like what you guys do, then they don't have to vote for you. They can campaign for somebody else, put somebody else in place and see if it works better for them. But when they sit there knowing that they really can't do one single thing about the people on the GA other than, go out and complain and get the city to put a different guy on there or something else, they're still not elected. And people don't like that. They just don't. They understand that that's not the way it's supposed to go in this country, and they don't want it. And most of them feel powerless and really, kind of like, what are we supposed to do? They're just putting this on our heads. Well, the district can do something about it, I feel. And I've stated it clearly, but I'm going to keep saying it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Any other public comment? Okay, seeing no public comment, I'll close public comment, bring it back to the board for any further discussions.
Yeah, I'd like to remind Stan that the PAC spent considerable time, maybe as much as 4 years ago, maybe 3, putting together advice to the GA board regarding public outreach. It's a pretty well thought out document that you can, so you don't have to start from scratch. There's something there.
Oh, yeah.
Now, it may need
I
to
agree,
be
yeah.
modified, but I just wanted to make sure that
Yeah,
you were aware of
yeah,
that.
no, I am aware. Thanks for reminding me. I had forgotten about it, quite frankly, but it was a good document, as I recall, when I looked through it. And we just need to execute it. And I think probably be in good shape. But, the transition from where we are now, having no involvement to getting them on board, there's going to be a transition there, and people are going to have to actively push and pursue getting that started. It's not going to happen by accident. But thank you.
Any other comment?
I don't think we can say too much, can we?
No.
So we need to probably
Okay,
let it go.
then there is no action on this item, so we'll move on to the next item. 7E, General Manager and Staff Report.
Okay, we'll start off as we always do with the safety record, and that is as of today, 72 days without a recordable injury. As far as the production, the metered production at the wells for the month of June, 246,547,700 gallons. That's 756.6 acre feet. And as we're required to do, and we have been doing for the last few years, we do report to the State Water Resources Control Board our production, actually its consumption, what goes through the meters, and through a distribution system, and also all the non-revenue water for the month. And that amounts to 183,777,300 gallons, or 564 acre feet. We did report to the results to the board on July 7th. Again, I think I mentioned before, the state changed the target date to report from the 10th of the month to the 28th. So we've been reporting like this for years, so we just continue to report as soon as we get the data. So we did report it last week. Consumption was down 27.9% compared to June of 2013, the baseline year that the state uses as a comparison. And since June of 2016, when this board decided to continue with a 20% conservation target, we have a cumulative result of 22.6%. If we look at the last 4 Junes, conservation rates was last year 30.9%, 2019 37.6%, 2018 21.4%, and 2017 21.9%. The residential gallons per capita per day, which is another number that we have to report, and again, this is a combination of indoor and outdoor, not just indoor, 151.7 not acre feet, 151.7 gallons per capita per day. And I believe last month was 129. So we've had obviously some higher temperatures, so the usage is up. We did add 9 new connections during the month of June, including 1 prepaid certificate. So the fiscal year ended June 30th. So for this fiscal year, we've had 126 new connections, and those connections have contributed $782,133 in capital facility fees. It's a significant increase from last year. Last year, we had only 77 new connections and $344,642 in capital facility fees. Any questions on that portion? Public outreach, the second month in a row, unfortunately, had a conflict with the mayor's community collaborative meeting with the holiday. Our staff meeting was the next on Tuesday morning. That conflicted with the mayor's meeting. The only outreach I did submit a new general manager's column to both the Daily Independent and the News Review. Both papers published it. I entitled it "It's Complicated," and it was intended to provide a simplified overview of the groundwater authorities' efforts to bring the basin to sustainability. Considering the challenges of space that I'm allowed, it was kind of a challenge to put everything into that limited space, but I did get a couple of good comments on feedback, or good feedback on it, so. That's all for public outreach. The January 27th, 2021 special board workshop, we did have the one item carry over, and that was the Finance Committee. It started out with the will serve letters. It's kind of evolved into the cost of service study, that sort of thing. So we had a report on that earlier. Mr. Worth had a conversation with Mark Hildebrand, and again, this has evolved into the recommendations you approved earlier for staff to work with Mr. Hildebrand on with his experience. He's worked with some water districts that are facing similar issues with SGMA and fees. So we want to work with, use his experience to find out, what impacts we can expect. And then, of course, come back to the Finance Committee, working through the Finance Committee on a recommendation of when to schedule the next cost of service study. So I think we can take that one off. It's been on there for a while. And it's going to be addressed again through the Finance Committee to the board. Next item, the mid-year board workshop. It is scheduled for Thursday, August 5th at 9 o'clock here in the boardroom. Lawrence put together the draft agenda as it stands right now with the items that have been brought up. We had asked before that any items that this board has to add to the agenda be sent to Lauren and I by the 28th of July. So again, anything that you want to add, please send it to us. We'll put the agenda together and get with President Griffin and finalize the agenda.
If I may, real quick, legal is going to ask that an issue for the flow restrictors be placed on the board workshop. We would like to discuss potential uses for flow restrictors to consider. So we'll add that one unless there's an objection.
I'll address the public comment earlier by Renee West-Lusk about the SB 606, AB 1668. I don't have it on this report, but I could refer to the admin exec committee notes. I believe during that committee, I gave a report on the status of that, and that I think if she could refer to those notes, I think that would give her sufficient information.
How much longer is the, no shut-off rule gonna continue to?
Can
September?
I answer that?
I'm sorry.
He asked about the governor's executive order 4220 about the water shutoffs. When is it going to end?
September 30th, I believe.
September
I was
30th.
okay,
Yes.
can I answer it? And in that regard, we did send out letters to all those that currently have a delinquent account to let them know they have till September 30th and encouraging them to come in and arrange for a payment plan. We didn't want them being surprised September 30th. So
I noticed that number actually climbed.
it did from 217 to 252 since May.
It's quite a climb.
And also, I sent out an email earlier that you would have gotten that talked about the bills to provide $1 billion for unpaid water bills to be distributed among water agencies. So those are trailer bills right now. They haven't been approved, but that's being considered for relief for agencies that may not be able to recover the money that's owed through delinquent accounts.
Okay, is there any public comment on any of Don's report before we move forward? Okay, we'll move to 7E, number 5, well 35, update.
All right. Well 35, we had a generator start up on July 1st with Cummins and Krieger and Stewart came on site. And that went well. The generator itself, though, still needs to be hardwired into the building, but they did go through all the safety and functions and stuff of the generator. And we still need to do staff training by Cummins. The door was rekeyed, but we are having trouble with the entrance door, so they need to come back and look at it. Matter of fact, when I went out there, I couldn't get it to open, so we're having trouble with it. But so that's on their punch list for the contractor. We've submitted everything to the State Water Resources Control Board to get our permit to use the well. So we're waiting to hear back on when that is going to be issued. They told me last week, and then it'll probably be this week, we hope. Then we'll have to figure out how we're going to do startup for that. And they have a couple other punch list items like installing a new thermostat and painting some of the discharge piping that didn't get painted. So, and then NG was out there today doing their commissioning of the system, verifying all the system settings and operation, and they replaced the one solar panel that needed to be replaced out there that ended up being bad. And let's see, they're working on the final paperwork to SCE as part of the interconnection agreement for that facility. And that's all I have for 35. If you have any questions.
Hello?
Hello, we have public comment on well 35?
No, public comment on general manager's report. I couldn't dial quick enough to get in to the meeting before.
Okay. We will open that back up for you then, Renee.
Okay.
Go ahead.
2 questions. How do I get the notes of the meeting Mr. Zadiba was reporting on that would have information about the 55 gallon per person per day? And my second question would be, the governor's orders on stopping shutoffs and September 30th, what happens if we're in this inclement weather with these horrible temperatures again? Does the district have provisions in place that about not shutting people's water off when we're in way over 100-degree temperatures or anything?
Well, to respond to your first question, the notes are in the board packet, which is on the website, correct? Yes. So it would be on the Water District's website in the board packet for this meeting.
Okay.
specific committee was the Administration Executive Committee. And then the answer to your second question is no, the Water District does not have any way to, I guess you're asking to forgive people with temperatures over 100 degrees. Hopefully by September, we're not into 120 degrees.
Yeah. My only thing is we don't know what this weather pattern's going to hold because it's so erratic. You know, I don't know. We could be in for more stretches of extreme heat. I hope the Water District maybe comes up with some kind of plan to execute when we're in these terrible heat waves, if they extend further into the year beyond August. There's a way to deal with them so people don't go without water. That's my only concern. Thank you.
Well, we do offer payment plans, so if a person were to come in and, you know, their water usage was unusually high due to the weather, they could come in and make a payment plan, make arrangements for a payment plan.
All right, thank you, Don. Thank you, Renee. Okay, so we'll move now from well 35 to item 6, post-earthquake repairs.
Easy for you to say, right? All right, so the last item we have that's going to be involved with Cal OES is the roof replacement and seismic upgrades at the booster station of the C-Zone tank site. So Wasson Roofing is the one that did the work there, and they've completed everything except for a couple of items, which is replacing the up ducts. They had installed the wrong ones. They had trouble getting the correct ones. They're supposed to get them this month, and they're supposed to come back and put the correct ones in, and also do some sealing around the top where the new roof and everything was put in at the top of the block there. So those will be the last 2 items on that. And I've started working on the spreadsheet and the paperwork, gathering everything that we're going to need to submit to Cal OES to get that reimbursement. That's all I have on that one.
Okay.
Don't have much too new. See, the other items would be the new booster station that we're going to get up at the Gateway Tank site. We did receive the 90% plans and reviewed them and gave our review comments back to Krieger and Stewart. We expect to get the specifications to review draft specs this week. And then the other project are the tank replacements. We're replacing the 2 bolted steel tanks that were damaged in the earthquakes, but we're also constructing 2 new ones. So we will be going out to bid for 4 new tanks. And we've looked at this point at 50% plans for all of those and given our comments back to Krieger and Stewart.
Thank you, Renee. Any public comment on Renee's presentation before we move forward with finance? Okay, we will move forward then.
Okay, through June of 2021, revenues, we had a revenue budget of 11.9 million and actuals of 14.8 million. Our expenditure budget was 12.8 million and actuals 13.8 million. So our net revenue is $1,016,030, which is 1.8 million better than the budget. Now keep in mind, these are all pending year-end entries. We still have revenue accruals, expenditure accruals, and liability updates that will take place in the next 2 to 3 months. Capital expenditures to date, 4.5 million. Of that, 2.67 million was funded by the 2018 COPs. We had debt service principal of $1,002,979.
Go ahead, Sandra, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was curious, we talked about this at the Finance Committee, but Don didn't want to stick his neck out on the question. What is your current anticipated outcome regarding both the net position and the unrestricted reserve for this past year?
I don't have one at this time. As I said, there's still accruals outstanding and liability actuarial updates that need to take place.
I understand we don't have all of the data, but based upon the data we do have, what would be your expectation with regard to the success that we had or didn't have last year?
I think we'll remain about the same. I don't see big changes one way or the other. But like I said, there's still more information that needs to be put in before I can give you a more accurate.
No, yeah, I wasn't looking for an accurate,
Status.
because we don't have all the data.
Yeah.
So you're saying our net position should go up about $1 million based upon the current numbers?
I'm still gonna say it's too early to say.
I'm hearing he doesn't want to stick his neck out.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We don't have all the information yet,
No,
so.
but based upon the information we do have,
If I was just looking at this snapshot right here, yes, that,
okay, thank you.
solar production. For the month of June, we had an actual savings of 48,522, which beat the guarantee of 48,467, barely. Yeah. And so to date, through July 2020, we have seen savings of 476,277. As I've said before, this pretty much just covers our debt service at this point.
Ty, how do we, how often do we clean these panels?
Those are cleaned once a year by contract. At the, yeah, that's in the current contract. Anything more, we would be paying additional.
Do they also, how do they check the panels to see how many are operating or not operating?
They monitor that continuously. They have a program that I believe remotes in and they can track that.
They monitor it by line, Chuck. So they have a string, and they monitor each
Gotta be
string.
by a string, yeah, that's what I was gonna say, so. How many's in a string? How many do they have?
I believe 8.
8 per string? Okay. And they can handle that then.
Yeah, it's in their interest too, because if they don't meet the guarantee, then they gotta pay us.
Yeah, yeah, okay, thank you.
Let's see, for conservation, for calendar year 2021, we have received 66 waste reports, made 66 contacts, 4 formal warnings issued, and 0 penalties issued.
Okay, thank you, Ty. Any public comment on Ty's report? Okay, hearing none, we'll move forward with Jason.
For the SCADA system upgrade, the site acceptance tests have been completed for Plant 2, except for a few minor punch list items and one programming change that we're going to ask for. We're going to wait till everything's done for the programming change because programmers have a tendency to grab a previous iteration and lose all the changes that were done. So we're going to wait till everything's done and make sure that we're all on the same page. Plant 1 is now scheduled for the 26th of this month to begin installation. And once that's done, we'll begin testing on Plant 1. And that is the final site to be done.
Okay, arsenic.
For the arsenic treatment facilities, Plant 1 produced 985,000 gallons. Plant 2, 23,950,000 gallons.
Operations.
For the month of June, there were 9 repairs, 38 replacements. NODES ran 11 times for a savings of 55,620 gallons, bringing our grand total to 8,092,805 gallons of water saved. And we also turned 109 valves, bringing our year-to-date total up to 405.
That's good news.
All right, thank you, Jason. Any public comments on Jason's report? Okay, any questions from the board? Okay, we'll move forward to 8, board comments, future agenda items.
None here.
None here.
I just have one. I would like to, I received 2 phone calls today and 1 last week. Maybe, as Jim said, I would like to maybe put on the workshop discussion on some way to test the meters as far as the the electronic reading with manual. I don't know how we can figure that out, but I know I had a question about it on mine, and then I've had, I think, 3 phone calls in the last 2 weeks on people that have questioned that, and they would like to do that, so if we could put that on there to discuss that. Is there any way we could do that, Jason, as far as doing a backup test on them, or besides doing a flow test?
Well, all the meter testing is done third party, and everyone that we've sent out so far has tested either accurate or below what they should be reading.
Okay,
So,
okay,
and there is a way to do it. It's just the customer would have required to put a deposit down.
okay.
But both the electronic registers and the manual read registers use the same mechanism to meter the water. So it's not the difference between the actual registers, it's the meter that record that.
Okay. All right. Okay, and that was my only comment, so if we could discuss that maybe. Other than that, I have none. Okay, then it is now 6:51, and we will adjourn the meeting. We'll go to closed session at 7 o'clock. Okay, we'll return to open session at 7:37.
Yes, the board met with staff and legal counsel on the items under closed session. No action was taken that requires disclosure under the Brown Act. That's all.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, we'll adjourn at 7:38. Thank you.